With us, Mr. Maher Al-Ka'bi. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome. I want to touch on a few points which was mentioned in the symposium which you focused on. You were focusing on purpose and also the preparedness for change and the shifting times. I want you just to expand a little bit on the importance of that and how do we prepare for it as, let's say, students in the educational journey or others who have finished.
Sure. Thank you for first of all for the invitation. I think it's important to recognize the fact that college time, it's probably for me humbly is too late to prepare people. It's very important that we actually start early off in the schooling itself. I sit as the chairman of board of governance for a couple of schools. We're trying to also devise curriculum. How do we infuse into the minds of the children the entrepreneurships? We mentioned even in the symposium over there, entrepreneurship, it does not necessarily mean that you start up a business, but it's all about how can you think differently? How can you free up your mind?
It's a mindset, as you said.
100%. The unfortunate part of it, there is the three triangle, which is the parents and the school and the children, are not getting into together. So we need to build a program that we bring these two together. What do I mean by that? Unfortunately, a lot of parents, they unconsciously build blocks in terms of children's from creativity and innovation. They don't realize that, but they do that thing. I was also privy to the same mistakes with some of my children. I've got 6 children.
MashaAllah. Right.
Those children where I unleashed them to do whatever they wanted to do, they came out better in terms of thinking out of the box all the time. Okay. And those where I said, okay, as a father being protectionist, saying it, okay, why don't you do it this way and that way? They were more funneled to do something. So I've unconsciously created walls for them. And I realized that with the other sons and daughters. So now whom I've left, so that's why the education program has to evolve and involve the parents and the children to make sure that we remove these barriers for the children to think differently.
And as you said, it's not just the university level, it's way before that.
Yes,
school
absolutely.
And even in the house.
In the Western world, you have people scouting for talent at the age of 4 years old. Wow. So if they can do that way, in our religion, we did that in the past. Unfortunately, with the life advancement and things being changing, things have evolved quite differently because you've got parents working, they got time constrained. So unconsciously, they build these walls around ruling children, and which is unfortunately detrimental to their advancement in terms of thinking and ability.
I was just talking with Mr. Killian, and we were discussing the differences perhaps, or, not differences necessarily, but the particularities of each culture and how they do it. I want to ask you about here locally in the UAE. What do you think are the opportunities, the incentives, the things that encourage people to get into entrepreneurship and getting startups? Do you think we have some advantages maybe that others don't have?
Actually, rightly so. If you look at the government, what has been doing, all the cities that we have what you call government funds, which were available. So if you realize, even the government realized the importance of the family businesses and how to be an entrepreneur. So when you come out, you're able to set up your own businesses. So there's a lot of drive from the government even to support that. So there's Khalifa Fund in Abu Dhabi, there is a SME fund in Dubai as well, and Sharjah has something similar as well. The reason being, again, to echo back what we have mentioned earlier, family businesses or entrepreneurship constitute a very large portion of your GDP, which is 90% in UAE. So if you want to preserve that and for that to work and go further, then you need to then support that and seed that kind of things as early on and pave the way of making things happen. Now, things are not that easy. Because it's easy said than done. We're going through the challenges. We were just discussing, even off the topic, if I want to set up a company to do something similar or raise fund in the IFC has the greatest ecosystem. But it's challenging to set up a company over there. It takes time. The fees are very large. So those need things to evolve. So we need to still come up with a system where there is a feedback mechanism to the government saying this is what we want to do. And we started seeing the government is listening and the government is trying to pave the way to make things happen.
I want to touch on the point of looking to the future and in relation to what we're talking about. And some of the statistics were mentioned that this year or soon is going to be like 40% of graduates have to be self-employed. And I'm thinking in terms of the amount of confidence we have in entrepreneurship. And I just want your kind of insight advice to people who want to get into this, but they're like, I'm going to get a job, let's say government, private, and it's secured, it's for sure I'm going to get pension, benefits. So how do we kind of change this mindset? And is it something we can have confidence in down the line?
Sure. First of all, on the stats of 40% going to be entrepreneurs in the coming, not first, second years, but another 10 to 15 years. So we still have a time to go, but it's not a really long time. My humble opinion is we don't force what we want people to do. We give them options and let them thrive to what they believe is correct for them. You will always require people working in organizations because ultimately, even if you're an entrepreneur, you create businesses, you're going to end up hiring people. Where are you going to bring people from? If everybody's going to be an entrepreneur, who's going to be working then in that case?
True. Okay.
So it's a balance act that we want to do to make sure that we support both the segments, the entrepreneurs and those who still wants to look for jobs. But you also can be creative in the jobs. And that's the formula which is missing today. I worked in international companies for a very long time. The company I worked with, they always actually pushed you to think beyond the box, how you can get things differently. So it's all about innovation. How do you change? How do you make a change happen in whatever you do? And that's why those companies survive. And it's a global company for the last 200 years. It's been in existence for 200 years. We need to replicate some of those models carefully to our working style over here. Because I do see the challenges because when I moved from an international company to a local company, I knew the cultural shock going to be there. And many of the people who are working in this large corporate company in UAE, which has 14,000 staff, a private company, many of them come from international organization, but still they could not marry the culture of the international organization to the local ones because the local one preceded. They were the super. So you need to create a balance and to make sure that people thrive at being entrepreneur and people wants to do a work. We need to create a nurturing environment for them. To make sure whether there is a trust, I think the time that we have seen people growing up businesses, it's evident itself that people can make things happen. UAE has been a very good example. I mean, like it has pivoted a lot. There's a lot of companies which made it to the global scenes now. Emirates Airlines is one of them, DP World, Emaar, Dubai Properties, quite a number of companies. Yes, they have been support given by government, but this is how company requires. They require support, they require paving things to be done so they can flourish. So these are the ideas of people who've managed that. So once you make the environment conducive for that to happen, people will deliver.
All right. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for your insights and for your time. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.